Well, as you heard from Penny's introduction, I've got one of my favorite people in the whole world back, who many of you will know have heard deep rap sessions with Marc and I, and we love to get on it and get at it. And nothing new will be here today, except we're going to have a great conversation. Marc's releasing a brand new book, which I've had the pleasure of reading, The Evolution of Love from Quarks to Culture, the Rise of Evolutionary Relationships in Response to the Meta Crisis. And this is a phenomenal book. And I was just saying to Marc before we hit record, I am duly impressed with not only the quality of the books Marc writes, but how many of them he can write. And I've written a lot of books myself. I know how much work goes into a book. And this he's made of steel, baby, to write this many books that are this quality. So, Marc, we're going to get into this. I'm really excited to be one of the first people to be able to share this book because it's a very, very important book. And we'll get into, I went through it and wrote down questions that I thought would cover some of the core issues that I think are important for everybody to really understand about love and look at. And I think you do such an amazing job, as always, with the issues of love and not only the issues of love, but the importance of the concept of love and value and relationship in the world right now. So welcome. Great to have you back.
It is, Paul, fantastic to be here. There are few places in the world I'd rather be than in conversation with you.
Thank you.
I'm completely delighted to be here in your space, utterly.
Thank you. Well, it's always a pleasure and you're always welcome. Marc, you're among a small number of people that are addressing the core issues we face today as opposed to harping about this or that symptom. You have given hands down the best arguments against Yuval Noah Harari's confused ideology I've ever come across. No question. I mean, bullseye. What does it imply when we have pundits in universities all over the world, and yet compared to the degree of and quality of the illusions being sold to the childlike public, there's very little intelligent response from them?
Yeah, no, it's it's, on the Yuval Harari, because you started there, it's worth a note. I actually invited Yuval. I tried to send a message through other people. Someone told me that there's a technology I didn't know called DM, make fun of myself, direct messaging. So I sent Yuval a long direct message and really invited him in that series of conversations, we did, the podcast we released, responding to Yuval, and inviting him to have a public conversation. I said, let's go at it. Let's actually, and the nothing of my critique of him was personal diatribe. It's more like what he's saying undermines the very fabric of cosmos. And I just want to give an example in order to respond to your question. So Yuval is not just there's three things happening. One is Yuval's not a philosopher making arguments. Yuval is parroting postmodernity. So that's what's important. If this was just one guy saying crazy things, who cares? It wouldn't take up any of my time or any of yours. But Yuval is a parrot of the postmodern moment. And then Barack Obama says, yeah, Yuval, that's great. And then Bill Gates says, and then Jeffrey Bezos says, and then there's an equalist in Europe and China. So he's parroting postmodernity, number one. Two, he's not just doing it intellectually, he's doing it with great intention educationally, meaning Yuval's now about to come out with his third children's book.
Oh, God, I can't even imagine that.
He's actually doing children's book. And I call these, and Yuval, if you're listening, lots of love, brother, but what you doing? And I call them, Yuval's bedtime stories, nightmares for children.
Yeah, amen.
Because what he's saying to children is, and I'll just give one Yuval sentence, right? This is in Sapiens, but there's about 50 parallel sentences in other pieces of the work, which is, he conflates the word meaning and value correctly. Those words are saying pretty much the same thing. And he says, any meaning or any value you ascribe to your life, right, in any way, and he italicizes any, just to make sure nothing's left out, is mere delusion.
Yeah, well, that's just ridiculous.
But it's a shocking thing. And when you read his bedtime stories for children, what he's basically saying to children is, these stories that animate world history, these are completely fictional stories. And then he proves that by saying, I'll just give you one example. This is just one example in his recent book, Nexus. He proves it by saying, for example, well, the Bible claims that first humans emerge in the Middle East and Mesopotamia. We know, anthropologically, that they emerged from the savannah in Africa. So clearly the Bible is a fiction. And then it gives 10 other reasons why the Bible is a fiction. But those are the kind of ways he discredits the Bible. Now, the Bible is a very complex document, and there's pieces of it that we need to leave behind, obviously.
Amen.
Right? Obviously. However, what Yuval's point is, so the reason, right, the Bible or the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes of Jesus, which are actually quite good.
Yes,
right?
They are.
Or Leviticus 19, which is actually quite good. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Et cetera, or the Genesis patriarch, matriarch stories about family dynamics, which are actually quite good, or the book of Samuel, which is actually quite important about kingship and power. But the reason Yuval says that this book cohered people is because we can cohere around lies. That human beings have the capacity to cohere around fictional lies because it's like we all plug into a cable, and in that cable is this shared story. The story is not true, but we feel connected to each other because we've all plugged into the same story. That is exactly not true.
No, it is. It's just terrible.
It's terrible. The reason the Bible coheres people is because when you read the Beatitudes or you read Leviticus and it says, love your neighbor as yourself, you actually feel the truth of that inside you. So the Bible is not a historical story. It's actually a story of value that when you hear the story, you're like, oh, right. I actually locate that in myself. And the reason that coheres me with you is because when I look in Paul's eyes and Paul looks in my eyes and we're reading, let's say, the Sermon on the Mount, we're like, wow, we get that. And I look in Paul's eyes and I see he's getting the same thing I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
Then we feel a sense of intimate coherence.
Yeah.
So feel intimacy with each other, not because we got duped. Paul and Mark got duped into plugging into the same, what Yuval calls mechanical cable. We got sold a fictional story, so we egoically feel connected because we got sold this fictional story. No. When you and I read the Upanishads, or we read, Marx at his best in the Communist Manifesto in the good couple of paragraphs where we got a couple of things right, or we read Leviticus and we're moved by it, and I can see that movement, that arousal of love and goodness and integrity in your eyes, and I'm feeling the same thing, we realize, oh, we're connected, not because we're of the same ethnocentricity, not because we're of the same, religiosity, because we're of the same humanity that flows through both of us. So stories are real, and stories of value are real, and value is real. And Yuval writes children's books saying, hey, none of that's true. No story you ever heard is real. And the first cohering story of reality was when the Homo sapiens, one branch of them, killed the Neanderthals in a genocide because they cohered around a fictional story, which is A, not a good reading of anthropology, but B, he's setting up, that's what stories of value are. So you're 12 years old. And you read this children's book that says any story of value you've heard is not true. It's a mere delusion. Any meaning you ascribe to your life is a mere delusion. So what does that do to you? It shatters you.
I want to ask Yuval what's important to him in an intimate personal relationship.
Well, that's a great, it's a great point, Paul. And you're of course cutting to the core of it, which is he doesn't live that. If we would sit with Yuval and his husband Yitzchak, right, I'm sure they have actually all sorts of things that they stand for. And here's the paradox. Yuval is spending his life fighting for actually a bunch of causes. And a couple of them we agree. So for example, yourself, myself, and Yuval agree about the danger of artificial intelligence, right, in certain forms. But Yuval has no way of grounding his critique of AI because he has no way of actually saying, for example, so let's say social media, the first wave of AI. There's three major waves of artificial intelligence. So the first wave is social media. So social media hijacks your attention. You and I have talked about this. We both know this very well. So here's the question. Well, what's wrong with that? So you're hijacking my attention.
Yeah.
In fact, the entire class of techno-feudalists, right, say advertising has always hijacked attention. What's the problem with actually, taking people's attention? There's no law against it. And the response is, unless you understand that attention is a first principle and first value of cosmos, and that attention, therefore, is a value, and values create rights, that's the nexus. Values create rights. There is no matrix for rights unless there are values.
Right.
And if values not real, well, then there's no rights and there's no right to attention. So if you're hijacking my attention, I can only arouse moral outrage against techno-feudalism and actually engage in a genuine attention rebellion if they've done something wrong. But if there's no value of attention, there's no reason not to steal it, which is why, last sentence, Yuval then writes and says, all human rights are delusion. They're made up. There's no human right that's real.
Yeah.
He can't say anything else because he says value's not real. He basically undermines the very fabric of reality itself, even as he contradicts himself and cries out existential risk. What are we going to do?
Yeah, Mark, there's a couple of things I want to share on this.
Please.
Because I'm starting to get so much pressure in me. I'm going to pop.
Go. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's all right. First of all, if there is no value and no rights, then you open the door wide. You take it off the hinges to piracy.
And totalitarianism.
And that's exactly what the World Economic Forum's about. That's what the World Health Organization's about. That's what COVID was about. And when you get people like that trying to convince people there's no values and no rights, then you have the perfect formula for absolute chaos.
Oh my God.
And then you go back to Darwinian evolutionary concepts of only the fittest survive. And then you get Bill Gates' attitude of everybody else is vermin and sheep, and we can do what we want with them, and we can catalog the whole world and sell it off, and, off you go. I mean, this is like the most fundamental flaw.
You're exactly right. In other words, the inherent, and this is the paradox of Harari's work, and then we'll come back to our major topic, but there's a really good segue here. Harari critiques Orwell, but if you read his critique of Orwell carefully, right, and he actually mentions particularly Orwell's notion in 1984 of doublespeak, internal contradictions, right, between different levels of propaganda. And I would say that Yuval is, and I invite him to debate at any place and any time, Yuval is engaging in intentional doublespeak.
You can't be that intelligent and not know what you're saying.
No, he's double speaking, and he knows he's double speaking, and he's actually setting the ground for totalitarianism. Because if no stories are real, and there's no stories of value that are real, and rights aren't real, and we're faced by existential risk, so the only thing we can do is basically take over the whole thing and control it. So we're going to actually cause the death of our humanity in order to avoid the death of humanity. That's the basic move he's making. Saying, you know what? And for him, that's not a big deal because he says free will doesn't exist and value doesn't exist. So losing them is no big deal. But let's bring this to love, because here's the paradox. Do you remember, that book 1984 that we all read kind of someplace in high school or after high school?
Orwell, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Orwell, right? So in 1984, you've got classical Orwellian totalitarianism, which is different than, by the way, Skinner's totalitarianism, which has a smiling face. It's the World Wide Web of America moves towards Skinnerian totalitarianism. The social credit system of China moves towards Orwellian totalitarianism. So one's the smiling face of, oh, it's all fine, right? We're just giving you products.
We'll just change your behavior.
we'll just manipulate your behavior through invisible forms of control and shape your desire. And Pentland at the MIT Media Lab tune your network without you knowing. And
you'll salivate at our demand.
And salivate at our demand, right? And Skinner is America's response to Pavlov, actually. The CIA's response to Stalin's Pavlov. And in China, it's more overt Orwellian totalitarianism. But here's the thing, right? And I can't think clearly with this sweater on because it's getting too warm in here. So this is like insanely exciting and beautiful. Who stands against totalitarianism in 1984? Winston and Julia, the love story.
Oh, cool.
Right?
I forgot.
Right. Now, there's a 1984, the whole movement of Big Brother of totalitarianism is to crush one love story of Winston and Julia. Why? Because a love story is inherently a story of value.
It's a story of life, too.
Story of life, because value is life. Value is
Yeah.
valor and valiance and the valence of electrons, and it's self-validating and it's valentius, right? Right? It's all of that. That's what value is. It's life itself, moving towards its own fulfillment. So actually, Big Brother 1984 has to try and destroy the love story because Eros is the primary value of cosmos, and Winston and Julia, feel like, wow, if we could just maintain our love story, that's the ultimate subversive act. And that's a great place to begin, right? In other words, when we're in a love story, right, we know, oh, this has value, not because it serves the state. This has value, not because it serves some totalitarian instrumental agenda, right? So I'll give you an example. I love my friend Paul Chek.
Thank you.
That's a love story. Right? So love stories are not only classical romantic love stories. Sorry, I don't want to move in. Right. But love stories are people love each other. And I have an intrinsic feeling that's why I'm alive. That's not instrumental. That's the purpose of the whole thing. And I have direct access to the truth of that experience, which means I have direct access to value. Right.
Love, this is a metaphor, but it's true. Love is what makes us breathe. It makes your heart beat.
Well, love is, so I would only, you and I always take issue on kind of subtle things, but I think we'll agree on this. I think it's not a metaphor, right?
Well, I'm saying that it's not a metaphor, but it is a metaphor because it just depends on how you look at it. But I won't take the time to explain it in great detail, but you did. You said from quarks to culture. Well, there you go.
You're right. Actually, that which brings the point of this book is, in some sense, there's 3 major essays in the book, but the point of the third essay, right, which is the scientific essay, is to actually show that the notion that reality is animated by eros, which at the human level we call love, but actually goes all the way down the evolutionary chain and all the way up the evolutionary chain, is actually precisely not a metaphor. Right? And the entire point of the book is actually the same first principles and first values with very precise definitions of eros and intimacy, right? And uniqueness, etc., that actually guide reality as quarks. You have 3 quarks come together, 2 down quarks, 1 up quark, neutron, 2 up quarks, 1 down quark, proton, right? So the proton and neutron is a configuration of intimacy between 3 quarks that are allured to each other in the first, 15 minutes after the Big Bang, right? And they create these subatomic particles. So a subatomic particle is actually, right, a particular configuration of allurement. And there's gazillions of quarks. Not all quarks fit together. It's not mechanics. There's only about 15, 16 kinds of quarks. And there's a particular set of erotic cultures, right, that actually cause these quarks to want to be with those and these to be with those. And there's actually a direct stimulus and response at play. And the quarks are actually exchanging information between them. There's actually, there's literally a conversation. There's literally, if you will, love notes exchanged between the quarks. Now, the nature of those love notes evolve in time, right? So, if Paul's writing Penny, right, we can be sure that those 3 quarks aren't writing those same notes. That's not what we mean. There's discontinuity and continuity up the evolutionary chain, but actually the basic structure of love and eros, and we'll unpack as much or little of this as you want, but the basic structure of love and eros works all the way down the evolutionary chain, from quarks to culture. And whether we're going from, dirt to Dostoevsky, or from, I don't know, from, slime to Shakespeare, you know what I mean? From, and we get the idea, right? From, let's do a couple more. Let's say from bacteria to Bach, right? From mud to Mozart. I think we got the idea, right? Right. That movement is the evolution of love.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yes,
That's the title.
I go into all this.
Of love.
I go into this very deeply in Spiritism. I'm just not jumping on it and throwing my
No, no,
2
no,
cents
please,
in because you and I have so much to cover. But there's
Yeah,
2
please,
things
following you,
I
my friend.
I didn't get to share 2 things that I wanted to bring up from the
Please.
earlier share.
Okay.
I believe that, first of all, I have a lot of problems with the Bible I won't get into because I've studied it enough and I've had to work with so many patients that were just trashed by the Bible psychologically. But
The Bible's a disaster unless you actually transform it in some way. But
yes, and I won't go into that because I have plenty to say on all that. But what I do want to say about the Bible is that if there's one thing the Bible really does a beautiful job of, it is a great book that shows the challenges of being human. It shows you what happens when you abuse women. It shows you what happens when you are confused about God. Yeah. It shows you what happened when you create commandments that go against your instincts. I could go on and on and on, but the Bible is really like a record book of the experience of being human. But the one thing that I think anyone can get out of the Bible is a record of what does not work well and what does work well. Love thy enemy as thyself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Beatitudes of Jesus. These are things that are archetypally true as long as there's human beings and love around. And I think that if the Bible was studied from that perspective, it could be phenomenal.
Yes.
As opposed to being, dogmatically enforced and confused and all the other shit that goes on. But I mean, all you got to do is look at the fact that there's 45,000 branches of Christianity, each claiming to have the authentic teachings of Jesus, to realize how confusing the Bible is to people.
What do you reach for when you need a snack to keep you going between meals? Here at the Chek household, we always have a selection of Paleo Valley's meat sticks close at hand. They are made from 100% grass-fed beef and venison or pasture-raised pork and chicken, and they contain organic spices to create flavors like buffalo-style chicken, jalapeno beef, and maple bacon pork. Paleo Valley's meat sticks are naturally fermented, so they are shelf-stable without the use of icky chemicals or questionable ingredients. Did you know that virtually all other similar snack stick products use GMO corn-based citric acid encapsulated in hydrogenated oils to process their products? Who wants to be eating that? Paleo Valley's meat sticks taste amazing and are good for you too, packed with protein and also gut-friendly probiotics created by the fermentation process. Paleo Valley sources from USA family farmers focused on using regenerative farming practices. This type of farming helps produce more nutrient-dense, nourishing meat while supporting the local ecosystem by helping rebuild topsoil, improve biodiversity, and sequester carbon while avoiding the use of chemicals and pesticides. So if you're looking for a snack that is good for you, good for the environment, and good for your budget, go to paleovalley.com/Chek15 and get 15% off your order of Paleo Valley meat sticks. That's paleovalley.com/CHEK15 for a 15% savings. Snack and be happy.
That's gorgeously true, tragically true, which is why we actually need to liberate the sacred sparks in the old holy texts and actually create a new holy text. I like to call that new text the Word. We need to reclaim the Word, and we need to actually articulate the move from religion to spirituality was an important move at a certain moment in history.
Yeah.
Right. And then there was this big explosion in the last 50 years, spiritual but not religious. That failed. Right. In the end, that failed. And it failed because the spirituality movement is unfortunately rarely is privileged to be populated by the depth of a Paul Chek. Right? That's not actually what happened. So the spirituality movement actually makes no commitment, has no sense of inherent value, right? Has no sense of inherent telos in life. So spirituality becomes spiritist, but in the sense of vapid air. We don't want to go back to the old religion, but spiritual but not religious is not going to take us home. We need to actually go to a new place where religion and spirituality come together. And we can begin to articulate a shared grammar of value, which is the context for a world religion as a context for our diversity. A world religion as a context for our diversity.
Yes,
and we can survive the meta crisis.
A world religion that identifies the common things that bind us together.
Right.
Which I say to people all the time, we need to take care of the soil because that's where our food comes from. We need to take care of the waterways because we drink it and everything lives off of it. We need to keep our skies clean because we breathe it. You know, let's call the world a game board for conversation's sake. We all need the board. If you have no board, you can't play chess or checkers or anything.
So one part of a world religion is protect the substrate, right?
Protect the foundation of life, for God's sakes. Protect nature.
But then the second is, okay, now let's establish that there are interior first principles and first values.
Yes.
Actually, we all share in common. So here's just one example, just simple example, right? When I meet Paul Chek, right, I'm confronted by an irreducible uniqueness.
Yes, me too, with you and with everybody.
Right. That's right. There's this irreducibly unique quality of love, beauty, and love intelligence and love desire. And if I meet Paul Chek and I'm saying, well, we're both the same, we're separate selves, separate individuations of this meaningless kind of, froth in an accidental cosmos, well, then our relationships, rivals, conflict, when there's metrics, what we can get from each other, hidden covert jealousies and angers that are impossible. But if I say, no, if I actually realize the depth, not by faith, but by knowing the nature of reality, that we're both in a field of value, and that actually Paul and Marc participate in the same field of value and allurement, but then Paul is a unique individuation of that field that never was, is, or will be ever again. And then I meet Paul Chek. I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking delighted. Because I'm not supposed to be Paul Chek. Paul Chek's supposed to be Paul Chek. And I realized he was intended by Cosmos. He was desired by Cosmos. He's needed by Cosmos. But I can only do that if I affirm that uniqueness itself is a first principle and first value. Uniqueness is not separateness. It's not an accident.
No. Well, it goes right back to your concept of Eros likes to penetrate and create novelty. I mean, there's no two grains of sand that are the same. There's no two trees, no rocks, no nothing that's the
Eros
same.
reaches for uniqueness. And when the self-replicating autocatalytic peptides, right, which are the key movement in abiogenesis that moves us from, the world of matter to the world of what matters to the world of life, right? Those self-replicating autocatalytic peptides are actually organized uniquely by the desire structure of Cosmos in order to always produce unique results. Now, what that means is it's actually shocking scientifically. It means that Paul Chek exists, not metaphorically, but because very precisely scientifically, reality uniquely desired Paul Chekness because the genetic structure of Paul Chekness is 1% to 2% different than Marc, which is the place where he's unique. And that only could have happened through chemistry. Mm-hmm. Stay with me one more second, and I'll shut the fuck up. But this is beautiful, right? Right. So chemistry means we're attracted to each other.
That's what alchemy.
Right. Hello, right? But so chemistry, we think chemistry is a metaphor. It's not. Chemistry is the structure of reality. Reality is chemistry. So why am I talking to Paul Chek today? Because I like talking to Paul Chek. And I'm allured. There's chemistry. We have chemistry. So yes, Spirit Gym is like insanely beautiful and great. And we need that. And I love that you get my work, and we love that. But that's part of something deeper, which is we're allured. Right? There's chemistry. So that same chemistry creates Paul.
I think God always sees God.
Uniquely.
Yes.
So God desires to manifest a unique expression and to experience that sudden shocking self-recognition. But the way it works physically, and you're the physical guy, you're the master of the physical, the way it works physically is that there's a unique set of about 10 steps, which are all chemistry, which are not mechanical. It's not chemistry repeating itself. It's chemistry making an irreducibly unique move of desire in order to manifest the unique configuration of intimate coherence, which is reality, all that is being Paul Chek. So actually, it's not a metaphor that Paul Chek exists because God not generally desired humanity. No, Paul Chek exists because the infinite intimate, we call God the infinite intimate, uniquely desired Paul Chekness. And there was a unique act of making love that generated that.
Every time Mark uses Paul Chek, just put your own name in there, please. I don't want to
no, I understand.
Make it feel like it's all about Paul here. But
Who's ever
Mark,
name? Who's ever
you're
name?
making a point, but I want everybody to put their name in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I got two things to say. One, you're talking about chemistry, but what drives chemistry is spirit.
Yes.
And you can't master the physical unless you understand the spiritual. There's no way about it.
What drives chemistry is attraction, allurement. And allurement is
spirit.
Pure spirit.
If you look at it from an alchemical perspective, whatever chemistry creates something physical, from the elemental perspective, earth and water are inert, they're passive. Fire and air, which are spirit, are active, volatile elements. You can't move a pile of rocks without an idea and spirit to empower the movement. I tell my students, how long do you have to stand next to a pile of rocks before a Rolex watch or a toaster oven jumps out? Well, forever. You're going to have to act on those rocks. That is spirit. That is the desire to create something useful and novel.
Beautiful. So, I want to just double click on one word, desire.
Yes.
That's so important, meaning reality is animated by desire.
That's God's willing desire to experience itself. In my model, that's the emptiness of God, or the feminine wanting to fulfill itself, desire is Shakti, and the fulfillment, the will of it, the production is Shiva.
Well, let's merge. So let's beautiful. So let's take Shiva and Shakti now, my friend. Let's bring them together in Heros, Gamos, and union. And let's say with the Song of Solomon, the great master of the original temple in Jerusalem. So Solomon says that will, the word will, is Ratzon, Ratzon. And the Song of Songs of Solomon opens with the words, right? Cause me to run after you, meaning arouse my will. And the word will, Ratzon, also means desire. And its will is precisely an act of desire. That's what will is.
It is.
It's not an intellectual act. Will means aroused desire. And all of reality, you're completely right. There's an appetition to cosmos. Cosmos has literally scientifically appetite.
Yeah.
Right? It's driven by appetite. Cosmos is hungry for value.
Yes. The other thing that I wanted to share from your earlier share about the extinction of meaning by Yuval Noah Harari, I've looked into this quite a lot because I have had to work with a lot of depressed patients and people that reach the state of apathy. Mm-hmm. And there's always a lack of meaning in a person's life that reaches one of those states. And suicide is the ultimate closure to that story. Yeah. And so I spent time inside myself working with my soul to explore why it is that when people lose meaning, they ultimately lose their desire to live. And my soul taught me that without meaning, there is no connection through which spirit can flow.
That's correct.
Meaning is what opens the flow of spirit. It's like when you flip a light switch on, you make a connection so that energy flows through a circuit and it produces light. Without meaning, spirit comes to a loggerhead in us. It's like a switch that's off.
No, that's
once we have meaning, Then we have inspiration. That's we breathe into. We have desire with intention, desire with
it's gorgeous. That's
direction.
That is a gorgeous, kind of self-reflection, not just on, as you're saying, Paul's self, but on the nature of self. I think it is 1,000% accurate and beautiful. And if I can, with your permission, my friend, just to add two small points, but I think they might be helpful. One is that meaning, when we think of the word meaning, we think, the human propensity to create meaning. We think, Viktor Frankl's man's search for meaning. That's incorrect, right? Meaning that appears at the human level is an expression of meaning that literally lives all the way down the evolutionary chain. Right?
Yes, indeed. It's without it, there's no survival for life.
There's no survival. Even the inanimate world, before what we call life, is coded with meaning. So
that's what instincts are.
That is what, and if you have, for example, 380,000 years after the Big Bang, and you have, right, a set of electrons, you have an electron, let's say, and you have a proton, and they are each coded with meaning. Right now, we use another word for it sometimes. We call it information.
Yes.
But information is not bits and bytes. Shannon got the math right, but the metaphor wrong, right? Information actually, as his co-writer Warren Weaver wrote, in Bell Labs in 1947, information is meaning and value. That's what information is.
Mm-hmm.
If you get that reality is information all the way up and all the way down, information means there's actual meaning that's exchanged in conversation. Two first persons come together in a second person space and exchange third person information or meaning. That's called a conversation, which defines a conversational cosmos. And what you're saying is, stunningly, is that actually that meaning is the currency of Eros, animates the evolutionary movement in cosmos. And therefore, you then, and we're together drawing this conclusion, which I'm ecstatic just to have this moment with you, right? The ideology of depression is futility.
Yes, in some way it is. And, I would like to just tack something on here.
Please.
Another investigation of mine is that from all my explorations, which have been intense and extensive, what we call God is infinite. And what we call information is how the infinite puts itself into formation in order for there to be vehicles of love, vehicles of exchange, vehicles of self-realization.
Yeah, that is gorgeous. I have to say a little funny thing for a second. You said, all of my research, which has been intensive and extensive, I would say, Paul, you are nothing if not intensive and extensive.
You're talking about yourself there, buddy.
Extensive and extensive, right? But that is completely gorgeous. And what happens is actually, the way you're describing this is exactly right. It's what Blake meant when he said, eternity is in love with the productions of time. Right?
Yeah.
That is to say, the word I use for God, because in every generation we have to call the name of God anew, is God is the infinite intimate.
Yeah.
Right. And so the God you don't believe in doesn't exist. The God that the Bible claimed that was ethnocentric and homophobic doesn't exist. God's the infinite intimate. And then infinity clothes itself in finitude. So the infinite intimate desires to clothe itself in finitude.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's the information.
Yes. And then all of a sudden I realized, what does that mean for me in terms of my own personal life? Right? Let's get like super intense and personal for anyone who's listening. What it means is I can actually have a direct experience of being radically desired by reality. And I always say to myself and to my students and friends, it's not enough to feel like you're loved by reality. It's not enough. You've got to be adored by reality.
Yes. And nihilism is the lack of that appreciation.
And nihilism is the lack of that experience. Is you have to be adored by reality. You have to feel that you are desired by reality. There's a text in the 3rd century, Paul, which I'll just, with permission, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitaveh lasod dirato b'tachtonim. God, Goddess, the infinite intimate, lusts right? To make his, her dwelling place inside of you. So
Yes.
in other words, I cannot have an experience of not collapsing in my interior into a kind of suicide unless I actually experience myself being radically desired. When a person has a first person experience of being radically desired, when we are radically desiring, when I say desiring, I mean clarified desire, not surface desire for a red car, not passing ephemeral desire. I mean radical, intense, serious, clarified desire. When we are desiring and when we are being desired in the clarified sense of the term, we do not need to answer the question of the meaning of life because the question disappears.
Yeah, nor do you have to investigate what love is either.
Right? Because so the experience of valor is that my life is valid because I feel the unique, right, approach of reality that actually turns me into the hero of my own life, which is why I'm filled with valor, why I become Prince Valiant, right? That's how it works.
Hi, everybody. My family and I love Organifi's green juices. You can get your green juice in 2 excellent flavors, crisp apple and original mint. Not only are these products made with certified organic ingredients to support your family's nutritional needs, they each have some unique benefits. Your green juice crisp apple eases stress with an effective dose of 600 milligrams of ashwagandha per serving. Helps reduce cortisol spikes that increase snacking urges and aids keeping your blood sugar balanced. Why snack on inferior foods that lack nutrition and often lead to blood sugar spikes followed by blood sugar crashes when Organifi's green juices are super healthy, taste great, and are as quick to make as opening the package and adding water. Your green juice crisp apple is made from fresh apples picked right off the branch and are packed with micronutrients to support your body's needs. Green Juice Original Mint contains ashwagandha, chlorella, and spirulina. Reset your body every morning with 11 detoxifying superfoods. You'll love the delicious taste and your body will feel strong and stable with all the micronutrients in each serving. Green Juice Original Mint promotes balanced cortisol and stress levels, perfect for weight management, and helps rid the body of harmful toxins. Personally, I'm super grateful that Organifi makes such excellent, easy-to-use drinks and foods that keep us energized, healthy, and clean inside while decreasing the urge to crave on inferior snack foods. My kids love both flavors, and I love knowing that we can all be healthy together with Organifi's excellent crisp apple and original mint green juices. These products are excellent for work, on the road, sharing with friends, and anytime you need a nutritious boost that tastes good. To get your crisp apple and original mint green juices, go to organifi.com/Chek20. That's Organifi.com/Chek20. Save 20% on your purchase using the code Chek20, all caps, on checkout. Don't worry if you forget your Living 4D discount code because you'll see it right there on the landing page. Enjoy Organifi's excellent green juices.
Here's a definition of meaning for you.
Take it away, sir.
My children's future.
Yeah.
That's a definition of meaning. And if you don't have that clear up front, then, you know, the curtain's closing, period. And also the importance of relationship, which, you know, your books really got a lot about the importance of relationship in it.
And maybe we have to get to relationship. And maybe we can even talk about role mate, soulmate, homemate, which is, I don't know if you got to that, but if you were the first part, third part, you'll tell us where you want to go. But
I got the whole thing mapped out, but I wanted to make a comment that I want to share for the listeners. There's a book I really recommend people read and consider or listen to on audio. The Bible as Dream by Professor of Jungian Psychology, Murray Stein. When you hear his analysis of the Bible using depth psychology to analyze it as though it was a dream, it's quite profound. And it really helps people see the Bible from a very different, meaningful perspective.
We definitely have to have a talk about the Bible. By the way, which is for sure, you just reminded me, literally, I'll have to send it to you. Maybe we'll be able to get it in the show notes. Literally like 3 hours ago, this book that The Evolution of Love from Quarks to Culture, you know, the future of relationships, it literally just went up on audio just now.
Oh, great. Fantastic. I prefer listening to your books on audio just because I have so much task specific
Yeah,
reading to do that
no.
I can, you don't know it, but you've enjoyed 1,000 workouts with me.
Oh my God. Right. So that's awesome. So this just went up on audio, and maybe just to go back to one thing that you said, which is really, really important. You said, okay, meaning is you care about your children's future.
Yeah.
I want to just break that down into 2 parts. One, without being in a field of value where it matters, you don't actually care about the future.
You don't care about anything.
Right. But I'm going to go with your definition of the future. I want to stay with your, right. You don't care about anything, but you can somehow get absorbed into the day-to-day, but you can't actually make a commitment to the future. You make a commitment to the future, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Based on meaning. So it's only when you're called by the memory of the future, it's only when you're called by the memory of the future that you can also organize appropriately the memories of your past. And that's
right.
what we do today. We focus only on the memory of the past. We don't allow for the genuine experience of heartbreak, which is an experience which is a function of the field of value. So all heartbreak becomes trauma.
Yes.
Right? Heartbreak becomes trauma, and then trauma becomes about a memory of the past, but we can't actually become whole simply by reorganizing the memories of the past.
No.
You have to be called by the memories of the future.
That's exactly why my entire system of healing and coaching begins with what is it that you love enough to grow and change for and become, i.e. grow into. And if you look into the delayed choice experiments from quantum physics, there's no question that the future can change the past.
Absolutely. The telos, you cannot read science without understanding that telos is a structure of reality. That's absolutely true. And I would call that in the language of cosmologic humanism, the story of value that we're telling in this book, we would call that unique self-recovery.
Yes.
That recovery
I love it.
And uniqueness is an organ of the future. It's like, uniqueness, uniqueness itself is an organ of the future. Uniqueness, right, calls you towards its own fulfillment. It's very subtle, but you have an immediate sense of it. If I'm just a bland, separate self, there is no real future. I'm just accumulating more present moments. But uniqueness means I'm called to a unique memory of the future that desires to fulfill itself through me, and only that gives me the power of the strange attractor of the future that can pull me out of the mud.
Yeah.
I basically go to my therapist and I keep reorganizing the past second again and again and again. I can't do it.
I love to conceive of God as an artist. And for the artist, it is the unique that inspires the artistic expression, the creative expression. I'm not talking about the art where you're painting something like a building that you could take a picture of. I'm talking about novel creations, which is how I love to do art.
Yeah.
If I just painted the same painting over and over again, I'd just bore myself to death.
Well, and the same thing's true, but here's the thing. That's so gorgeous, Paul. That's so gorgeous. The nature of the artist, let me go back a step for a second. So let's go back 2 steps, because what you said is so important. I want to just give it, reverence and contemplation. So the word amen means 4 things, but one of them is artist. Oman.
Beautiful. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Amen means trust, not faith, trust. Amen means spirit gym, practice, literally practice. Second meaning, imunim in Hebrew. The third meaning is omein, which is the nursing mother, the child that sucks at the breast of the nursing mother.
Yeah.
Those 3, trust with profound practice, and the knowing that I'm also always sucking at the breast of the nursing mother, is that which infuses Oman, the act of the artist. So
that's beautiful.
It's so you're talking about so beautifully this experience of the artist. So here's what's so beautiful. The pleasure of the artist is very different than the pleasure of awareness. Let's say true self, classical enlightenment, true self, awareness, very beautiful pleasure. But actually, we leave the ashram in order to create our art. Because actually all of true self pleasure can't get you any of artistic pleasure. And artistic pleasure at its very core is the act of self-creation. I've literally become the artist of my life.
Yes.
In a very precise way. And actually, there's a thinker, a very good friend of Paul Tillich's, right, named Joseph Soloveitchik, who's a great Aramaic kind of scholar, who writes in one of his Hebrew texts, in the second part, he writes that the definition of the sacred in the literature of the canon is the artistic act of self-creation.
Yeah, I think God is, the reason it's important for me to share with people the concept of God as artist, because we are so caught in the weights and measures, the left brain of everything. And, you can't weigh and measure love. It doesn't fall into the category of a scientific evaluation. And if you do, you have to create a subjective scale that you then objectify, which then kills the eros.
Which doesn't work, right? That's right. In other words, in some sense, the beauty of the ancient world had many shadows, and the Bible has many shadows. But in terms of science, what Aristotle was doing was classification. When we moved to Kepler, Galileo, Newton, we moved to measurement.
Yeah.
So we reduced value to the measurable.
Yeah.
You and I know that actually it's the priceless moment. It's the immeasurable, but we look at the immeasurable as being not real. In other words, what essentially happened is the STEM professions, right, classical science, engineering, essentially tried to colonize the real.
Yes.
And the colonization of the real then disqualifies the immeasurable because it doesn't yield any short-term gain, which is precisely the root cause of the meta crisis. And it's that exponentialized leads us to a meta crisis, which is the suicide you were talking about earlier. But now it's no longer the suicide of the individual human being. It's the suicide of humanity, which is what existential risk is. So we can only respond to the suicide of humanity by actually enlivening humanity with a new story of value. That's why you can't heal existential risk by actually figuring out a new way to find biological weapons in the wastewater, although we should do that. We should do infrastructure responses to existential risk, and we should do new legal structure, social structure responses. But unless we change the superstructure, unless we reclaim value as being real and love as being a core value of cosmos, and that my love story participates in the universal love story, right?
Absolutely. It is the universal love story in unique expression.
In person. I am the amorous cosmos in person.
If it wasn't for individuality, love would have no purchasing power, no agency.
Because what love is a perception of the unique individuation of the radiant divine.
It is. It's the binding force that it really, to me, one beautiful expression of love is the true meaning of namaste. I bow to the God in you. I see you as the divine.
That's so important. Meaning, love's not merely an emotion. Love is a perception, which then creates in its wake an emotion. But it's not just a perception. It's a perception identification, meaning I see your beauty, but then I don't say, oh, I see your beauty, but you're really your pathology. No, I see your beauty, and I identify you with that beauty. And as I see, that is who you are. That's what it means. And by the way, hate's the exact opposite. Hate means, oh, I've discerned some flaw in you. I then hyper focus on the flaw. I distort it, exaggerate it, right? I deny my ulterior motives, right? Malice must, never admit of itself. So it always pleads other motives, right? And then I identify you with that flaw. That's hate. So it literally is the flip opposite of the perception of love.
The thing I love about love is it's the only aspect of consciousness that I know of that can see the perfection in the imperfection of another human being or anything,
That's gorgeously said. In other words, and by the way, in that line, I want to say it first poetically and then scientifically, but first poetically, the greatest love song written in the last 40 years that's had more covers made from it than any other song.
Let me guess. It's all about the bass.
It's all about the bass. It's Cohen's Hallelujah.
Yes, that's a famous song. My God, there's entire documentaries on it.
Right. So and it's about the holy and the broken. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
And David played the secret chord that pleased the Lord.
There was a lot of spirit moving through him when he wrote that.
And he wrote that over. I mean, it's an amazing story here. I mean, the word hallelujah is a great word.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's about when I love you, right? Love is not a victory march, right? It's sometimes a cold and a broken hallelujah, but there's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter which I heard, the holy or the broken hallelujah. And what Cohen is understanding, he understands the word hallelujah itself is so Yah, hallelujah is Yah. It's the breath. And then Hallel means two things. It means your utter beauty, your pristine beauty that I'm ravished open by. And it also means Holelut, which means drunken, broken intoxication.
Wow.
So the word hallelujah itself is the holy and the broken, because as you're saying, Paul, so gorgeously, the nature of love is that it actually animates and sees and embraces all of the contradictions.
Yeah. And I know you've probably had this experience, and I'll share something I've experienced many times that taught me this and even shocked me at times. I've admittedly met people that in the first initial meetings, something about them just hit me wrong.
Right.
And you know, I didn't see them. Mm-hmm. And then there's been situations where I've had to work with people like that. And then as I got to know them, I realized I overlooked tremendous beauty. Yeah. You know, as I got to see who they were, and my heart was able to connect to them. And then I remember many times thinking to myself, you know, you've got to slow down making evaluations of people, because you've made this mistake a number of times now.
That is crazy beautiful, Paul, right? I mean, it's crazy. What you're saying is, when I really hear someone's story, it always creates a new love story because I fall in love with them.
You realize how dangerously,
oh my God,
how dangerous the ego is as a filtration system. It's too mechanical.
When you really enter the depth of someone's story, can I tell you a 10-second story, since we're telling stories for a second? So it was 2006, and I was in Salt Lake City. It was probably like the worst 2 weeks of my life. It was like bad. I'd kind of gotten attacked, falsely story, 2006 drama, right? Right? I'm right near Snowbird at my friend Kristen Ulmer's, who's a fantastic person and a great skier. And she's just got engaged, and I'm staying with her for a couple of weeks. I've just come from the Middle East, and I'm not quite sure how things are going to go. And I've got to get the bus into town in Salt Lake City. So I haven't slept for like 2 weeks, like probably the worst 2 weeks of my life. So I kind of trudge out to the bus stop, like exhausted beyond exhausted. Of course, the bus never comes. And I'm just, I kind of said to, and it was a critically important meeting that I needed to turn something around. And I figured, okay, I'm done. It was I would say the most exhausted, I'm just done. You know, this car kind of pulls up, and this woman, you know, maybe 55, 60-year-old woman rolls down, you know, the window. And I figured she's probably an axe murderer, but I said, what the heck, you know, I'm just going to get in. You know, she's like, I said, I thought there was going to be someone here, so I came to give you a ride. I'm like, okay, axe murderer, but I'm getting in because I'm so exhausted. I get in the car, and she starts telling me her story about her son and her second son and her husband who left her, and, you know, her mother's sick, and how she did it and where she grew up. And it took us about an hour to get downtown. I completely forgot about any troubles I might have had. Everything else disappeared, and I was completely entranced. I had entered into her story, and I was listening. I was asking questions, and finally we kind of roll up to the building where I needed to go, and I get out, and we're both crying. Like the time had just completely stood still. We just have tears, and she was a Mormon, so that she's speaking in biblical terms. She looks at me and she says, who are you? Are you the high priest? But it was very beautiful. And what she meant was, and at that moment, I realized, Paul, in that moment, and although it all went right, it all turned out okay. But you know that Cohen song, even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord of Song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah. I realized in that moment, even if it all goes wrong, I can listen to people's stories. And that's enough. That's enough. So I'm really just commenting on the beauty that you said, that when I really listen to someone's story, and it's like, I fall in love with them. I can't but not, because every story is really a love story.
I'm super excited to let you guys know that I found an amazing energy product. I had previously fell in love with Update, but my buddy Aubrey, who is here with me right now, came to me and said, Paul, I've got something I think you'll like even better than Update. And I was suspicious because it's pretty hard to beat it. So I waited for the right day when I felt like I could really use a little energy boost, and I tried it, and I was absolutely blown away. Not only did it give me a beautiful, smooth lift, but I felt like a sense of holism, integration, like I had been doing Tai Chi. It flowered. It was like the sun shining. And I thought, wow, this is actually pretty damn good, and it's worth me telling people about. So I've got Aubrey here to tell us a little bit more specifics about his amazing new Correct Energy product. So Aubrey, tell us a little more about it. It's a phenomenal product. I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you so much. Honestly, I wouldn't have started another supplement company after Onnit if we weren't able to make this product. This product actually birthed the company.
Oh, great.
It was so good and so powerful and so important, I felt like. It was like, we have to launch this product. We have to build a company to allow this to be the core. And like you said, the main ingredient is the same as it is in Update, which is the Infinity, that paraxanthine, which is a caffeine metabolite. So it's something that your body naturally breaks caffeine down into in the body.
Yes.
They were able to isolate that. And it really feels like in some ways, like the spirit of caffeine. Like
yes.
It distilled the very essence of caffeine itself. All of the things that we wish caffeine would do, and all the things we wish caffeine wouldn't do. It captures that in a really unique way.
And none of the buzz that I get from caffeine. It's just smooth. It's really amazing, smooth, uplifting energy. And I don't feel any hangover or letdown from it at all. It's just really just like a little elevator ride up to a higher level of creativity and self-expression.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful parts about it. It feels both completely subtle and absolutely powerful. Like, you'll take it, may even forget that you took it, but then realize you just had the best 6 hours, that you've had in a long time. And I think it's a combination of that paraxanthine core. The Infinity is the branded core, which is a scientific advancement, isolating this caffeine metabolite. Then we do what, we always do, and surround it with the best plant extracts. So Mangifera indica, it helps support the dopamine pathway. It's actually from the mango. And then Alpinia galanga, we have a branded extract of that. And that was a real insight that we had. We looked at the different plant extracts that worked well with caffeine and made the bet that those things that worked well with caffeine would work well with the caffeine metabolite. So both of these different herbal extracts actually inhibit the breakdown of dopamine in the body, and then support actually what caffeine would do. So we have these natural plant extracts, including quercetin, decaf green coffee, decaf green tea. So we treated this like there's a natural intelligence to caffeine. We've isolated the intelligence of what the body does with caffeine, and then surrounded it with the herbs and different compounds to give this kind of holistic formula that I really believe it's the best energy product that exists
out there. I wouldn't be here with you. I don't sell or offer anything that I don't fully trust and use myself, and wouldn't give to my own family. So I'm so grateful that you created this and shared it with me. So for those of you that want to give energy a try, go to Correct Life. That's KORRECT life.com/Spirit Gym, and get 15% off on your first order. Aubrey, thank you again.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it reminds me of a guy in high school, a buddy of mine. His name was Chris Steckley, and there was just something. Him and I were both super competitive, right? And so it just we got so close to just beating the hell out of each other so many times. And I'm always like, why is it that this guy pisses me off so bad? Well, the long and the short of it is we at some level we both realize that we're both just super competitive.
Right.
And we, when we're on opposite sides, it's intense. But the love story continued that when I started racing stock cars, he was working in logging camps and he was making a lot of money, and he wanted to contribute to my stock car. And he said, can I help? I'd like to be on your pit crew. And he ended up buying my racing engine.
Wow.
And becoming like one of the most important people on my crew. And I ended up setting 3-track records as a rookie, but I couldn't have done it without this guy on my team,
Wow.
And so we went from beating the shit out of each other in rugby games and every other damn thing to him and I partnering up to kick ass racing stock cars. And I'm like, how did I oversee the amazing guy right in front of me? And I could tell you 1,000 stories like that, which only highlights my stupidity.
Well, it highlights your ability to transform and to open your eyes the way that you do. And in some sense, and maybe last thought, then we'll take a 1-second station break. But, when I'm working with, I used to work a lot with couples. I do it very little now, though it's so important. It's some of the most privileged things I've ever been able to do. Just other demands of running this great library don't allow me to. But one of the key moments always is when two people who love each other are fighting because they're looking at each other face to face, and there's this battle.
Mm-hmm.
And what we always try and do is can we both turn and look in the same direction?
Yeah.
Right. And realize that the only thing that's standing against us is unlove.
Mm-hmm.
It's the two of us facing unlove together. So as the two of you came together and then you found a way to look in the same direction, right? It creates this enormous energy. And really, to love God, we talk about loving God. Who are we loving? To love God is to let God see through my eyes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to that's what it means to be unique self, to see through my eyes. And to love is to see someone else through God's eyes.
Yes.
Right?
Mark, I'm totally digging this conversation. I wish I didn't need to sleep or eat and have kids to visit or talk to you till my heart stopped, which could be a long time because I get so passionate. Your book is all about love at the core, as we've been discussing. Like God and soul, love is an elusive word that is often used to justify atrocities. How many religious wars have been motivated by the love of their God, for example? Clearly, those like Harari and others in the World Economic Forum love what they're trying to do. Hitler was in love with the vision of an Aryan race. Communists love the ideology of communism, and on it goes with love. I feel it's important that we make it very clear what specifically you mean when you use the word love, and how can we transcend the personal conception and use of love to the archetypal. And if it's not the archetypal expression of love that is the basis of cosmoerotic humanism, then what is this love you speak of and seek to inspire?
Okay, that's a great inquiry. Let me break it down. I love that inquiry. Let me break it down kind of in simple terms. You're a highly, perspicacious, expression of the amorous cosmos who's ontologically orthogonal to many other beings. So I'm going to try to say this simply. Okay, so here we go. Okay, right. So the question you're asking, Paul, is the ultimate postmodern question. And this is the correct critique of postmodernity. And this is where our friend Jordan Peterson gets confused, where he kind of dismisses postmodernity. Postmodernity is saying something very, very important, which is essentially your question. It's saying, yo, you're talking about love. Did you forgot about Crosby, right? Crosby, Stills, Nash. And when Young was still around, how many people died in the name of Christ? I can't believe it all, right? Meaning love itself has been so hijacked, misused, distorted, Pope Pius, during the Holocaust, he says, I can't violate the delicate reserve of Christian love and interfere with Hitler. Hello, right? So in other words, love itself has been so distorted that postmodernity says the words lost all meaning. right?
Well, let me interject something real quick. Speaking of this challenging issue of love, if you want to meet the devil, just pick a fight with Jesus.
Right?
You will meet the devil. And that's exactly what I mean about confusion about love.
That's exactly right. I'm just finding a place to put down this tea, right? That is exactly right. Now stay close. Let's stay real close together because this is insanely important. So when the new age today or the human potential movement says, oh, love's real, right? The academic world just kind of ignores it because the academic world basically asks your question. They say, what do you mean? Love is used to mean 1,000 different things that are contradictory in all times and places, and some of them are corrupt and evil. So love doesn't actually really mean anything. Now, that is the basis of the critique of value and the claim that value and love as a value is simply not real. It's a made-up idea. Now, what you're pointing to, Paul, I have different language for it, and I've spent a lot of time on this, but you're absolutely pointing to it. You're saying, well, what's the archetypal definition of love? And what you mean by that is what
something that transcends individual biases.
That is to say, so postmodernity says there is no archetypal notion of love. It is made up. The word doesn't mean anything. What we're saying, Paul, is no, that's actually not true. We're saying there's what I would call a first principle and first value of Eros, which is a real value of cosmos that is I would
call it the value.
I think that Eros is the value of cosmos. I completely concur, and I spent 40 years kind of thinking about that. Doesn't make me right, but it means it's certainly well considered. You're absolutely right. It's the value of cosmos, and it means something very specific. Now, here I want to play with you just for a second. So postmodernity says there is no eternal value, and love is not an eternal value because it's always changing. And as evolution and cultural diversity emerge, right, it gives birth to modernity and postmodernity, and they say, love's not an eternal value. It's always changing. Okay, now, what we're saying is, no, love is an eternal value, and it's evolving. Mm-hmm. That's the title of this book, The Evolution of Love from Quarks to Culture. Now, stay close with me give me a second. I'll give it right back to you. But
by getting any closer, we'll be swapping spit, buddy.
Yeah, no. I go, oh, my God, like this is like crazy, right? So the assumption of postmodernity and modernity was that eternity and evolution are contradicting each other. Not true. The eternal Tao is the evolving Tao. Mm-hmm. Eternity and evolution are actually embedded, inter-included with each other. So what does that mean? It means there's a notion of eternal love and eternal value, but eternity doesn't mean everlasting and unchanging. It doesn't mean everlasting time, unchanging time. Eternity means beneath time, beneath space and time.
And through it.
And that which is beneath and beyond, excuse me, right, moves through.
Yeah.
So actually, love, Eros, always means something very particular. So I want to see if we can get this for a second. Blow my nose in between. So what love, Eros means is, Eros, and this is the equation, the first principle and first value Eros love equation, which is at the core of cosmorotic humanism, which is the new story of value, which is Eros equals the experience of radical aliveness, desiring ever deeper contact and ever greater wholeness, which yields in its wake ever greater value.
Amen.
Now that understanding of Eros, of love, applies to 3 quarks that become a proton or a neutron. It applies to subatomic particles that become an atom, to complex atomic structures that become a macromolecule, to the autocatalytic cycles that move macromolecules into cells, from cells to multicellular structures, to early organisms, right, to neural cord, neural net, amphibians, plants, amphibians, early animals, later animals, mammals, right, on the savannah, bipedal, Homo erectus, Homo sapien, and all through the levels of humanity. All of that is an evolution of the same love equation. It's always Eros. It's always radical aliveness. It's always desiring deeper contact that then generates greater wholeness, which then yields more and more value. That is the story of the evolution of love. So that's insane. Meaning reality's not merely a fact, reality is a story. Well, reality is not an ordinary story. Reality is a love story. But reality is not an ordinary love story. Reality is an evolutionary love story. And the plot line of the evolutionary love story is the evolution of love. And then last sentence, and my story and my personal evolution, as I'm doing Paul's Spirit Gym, my personal evolution is chapter and verse in the universal love story. And all of a sudden you can get rid of a lot of the Prozac.
Too true.
Right? Oh my God. And so it's so fundamental. It's so insanely important.
Yeah,
Right?
it
It
is.
changes
And
everything.
I appreciate you addressing that. Of course, I have my own
Please.
approach. No, I don't need to share it. You've covered it. I don't need to tread that trail again, because there's so much I want to get into with you.
I'm with you, brother.
But yeah, thank you. I just felt that we have to put that foundation in place.
It's critical. Without that, we can't move.
Yeah, again, there's the sort of the game board, right? You have to have the field. You have to have a field of action, or there's nothing really but opinion, right?
Right. Can't move without.
Now, and as you've just done, you rightly place a huge emphasis on story. You use the word story in the context presented in the evolution of love, in my opinion, congruent with what myth actually is and represents. You are essentially addressing the issues of birth, life, and death from the context of the past and the recent COVID and related WEF influences, along with the whole movement of scientism and related transgender, transhumanism story. You're presenting the opportunity for a new source code or a more empowering myth of our time. So can you share your thoughts on the relationship between your use of the word story and that of myth regarding what humanity needs now?
Sure.
See, because I want to make a statement before you start, though. If you look at Joseph Campbell's 4 functions of myth, the first one is to maintain a sense of magic and mystery and awe of the cosmos and all that is life.
Right.
That's the first function of a myth. And that's really inherent to what you're referring to as story here.
There is a relationship between, what story, the way I'm using it in myth, but they're not the same. And the difference between my use of story and the general use of myth is that my use of story is correct and the general use of myth is wrong. So
well, you mean the publicly treated use of myth. Most people don't have a fucking clue what myth really means.
I'm just playing. I'm just playing for a second. But I'm playing in order to sharply distinguish them. And you're absolutely right, Paul. The way you're using it is a very particular way, which I'm
using it how it's actually meant to be used.
But let me tell you what I think the problem is with myth and why I don't use it. So I want to kind of this is great. And,
well, I know where you're going to go, I suspect. And that is that the postmodern use of myth equates to lie and they don't understand it.
So let's start there. So one is we assume myth is something that's not true. So that's the first.
Well, myth is something that's never true, but always will be.
but what myth, the way myth works is it starts at the human level. And that's problematic. In other words, myth is a human creation. And actually, story is the structure of cosmos. So just let's go slow for a second. In other words, the nature of cosmos is there's something called story, which unlike Aristotle's Poetics, where he describes the 6 elements of tragedy, which is close to the way you're using myth, right? Mm-hmm. Story, right, goes all the way down the evolutionary chain. So story has the following elements. Every story has causality. And what I'm about to share, Paul, applies literally before the world of life. It applies in the world of matter, in the world of life, meaning in the physiosphere and the biosphere, and in the world of the self-reflective human in the noosphere. I call those, the 3 big bangs, and they actually exploded, meaning in the 4th big bang, which is the emergence of the new human. So here's story. So story means A, there's a causal relationship to events. One thing causes another thing. So there's dignity. That's the first element of story. B, two, it's not just, that could be true and it could be circular. Story means there's direction to the story. So there's a line quality, which actually there's a plot line, right? 2. 3, a story is animated by desire. Desire is always an animating characteristic of story. 4, the quality of desire is always a particular desire, which is a desire for value. 5, it's a desire for more value, but not like more value in the sense of more ice cream, but there's a desire to grow and transform, meaning I want evolution, I want transformation, right? 5. 6, in the story, there's always first, second, and third person. My first person, third person information, second person exchange. So there's conversation in the story, right? 7, there's always a dimension of freedom in the story. Because if there's no freedom, it's basically a tech manual. There's got to be some dimension of freedom. 8, right? There's always a dimension of telos in the story, meaning the story is not only based on the antecedent causation of yesterday, but it's pulled by the memory of the future. And for now, we'll stop at 9. There's really 10, but the 10th that I want to talk about now. But 9, right? 9 is that the story has an arc, which is an intensification. Right? There's an intensification in the story. It goes someplace, and then it hits, let's say, a crisis point. Then the crisis, right, generates the next part of the story. So those are 9 qualities of story. That took me, my friend, that story I just told you took me about 20 years to work out. So it's not casual. And those elements of story actually live all the way down and all the way up the evolutionary chain, which is why the basic structure of reality is not fact. Story is actually the ontology of cosmos, last sentence. And if you look at the first originating document of the Solomon lineage, it's a document which is somewhere about perhaps 100 years before Jesus. It's around that time. It's called the Book of Creation. It has about 455 words. And it opens with its first kind of sutra-like statement by saying, reality is number, book, and story. Number, book, and story, which in Hebrew is the same root word, sefer, sipur, and mispar. You can hear it's the same root word. So a story is an account of something, right? A number is to count. A cipher, C-I-P-H-E-R, is sipur, story, right? So you've got this very tight interrelationship between, right, a story of value and mathematical value. You have number and you have story, which are the text of reality. So just like numbers are Platonic structures of reality, which why, Peano's theorem in like 1890 is how you resolve all of it. You trace all of arithmetic back to fundamental first principles, essentially. He calls them axioms, right? In the same way, reality is actually traceable back to a series of stories, and the tree of life in the Solomon lineage, which people talk, it's the 10 sphirot they talk about. And sphirot are translated as either spheres or illuminations, but it's actually not what the core word means. Sphira means stories. There's actually 10 primal plotline stories in reality, all of which in which we participate. So that's a sense of story, my friend. It's exciting. I'm so excited. So we've actually never talked about this before, and it's so fundamental.
Hi everyone, this is Penny, interrupting Paul's podcast with an important announcement. If you've been listening to Paul's podcast regularly, you'll already know how much your gut affects everything, from your mood to your energy to your overall vitality. So here's something I'm genuinely excited to share. The Chek Institute is offering the Gut Health Reset, a free online mini course designed to help you finally get your digestion and your life back on track. Yep, it's completely free and there's no catch. This course gives you the tools to understand what your gut's been trying to tell you. You'll learn how to identify the root causes of bloating, fatigue, and brain fog, and how to start supporting your microbiome naturally. It's packed with Paul's tried and true wisdom and the Chek Institute's holistic approach, the same philosophy that's transformed thousands of lives. Think of it as a short, powerful reset to reconnect you with your body before the new year hits. So if you're ready to finish this year strong and start 2026 feeling clear, energized, and balanced, grab your free access now. Just head to paul.chekinstitute.com/spirit gym. Again, that's paul.chekinstitute.com/spirit gym and start your gut health reset today. Your gut, and honestly, your whole body, will thank you.
Well, actually, everything you've just said is totally coherent with what myth really means if you study it deeply. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples to make the point.
And I'll shut the fuck up, I promise, but you'd have to say, if you argue that, my friend, that myth goes all the way down.
Of course it does. Look, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. That's a myth.
Okay, but I'm saying, but if you go there, we're totally together.
That's where I'm going, and let me just
go
hit the fucking nail one more time. One of the most powerful definitions of myth I ever learned, I learned from James Carse, author of Finite and Infinite Games, author of The Religious Case Against Belief, and I've read every one of his books. And he was a deep, amazing, loving man. Episode 62 of my podcast, blow your mind.
Wow.
When I said to James, how would you define a myth? Now you need to hold on to the handles there, buddy.
Got the handles there. We got it.
A myth is a story that tells itself. The story of love fits that definition. A myth is a story that tells itself. That should put you into meditation for a long time.
Beautiful, right? So in other words, what he's saying is, which is absolutely true, and I don't know his work, but you mentioned him last time, so I'll have to look it up, right? But by it tells itself, I think what, I apologize, Mr. Carse, first name?
James.
But what your friend James, right, I believe meant was, but certainly it's true, I can't say about what he meant, is that when we say that story is the basic structure of reality, we were saying it's not something that this happened and now a story sets into motion. Story is the engine of reality. It's the currency of reality.
Mm-hmm. That's the tell itself.
It's self-generating. It tells itself. That's absolutely true. All of reality, there's a saying in Aramaic, translated loosely, God loves stories.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And the rest.
Right. And it's not by accident, when we go to a movie, right, but a good movie, there are not a lot of those around, but you go to a great movie and you're completely taken in by the story, time stands still.
It does.
And we enter into that eternity that we talked about before, which is beneath time and space, because we've entered into the space of story. And this is where the Eastern teachings got so confused when they said, move beyond your story. No, don't move beyond your egoic, contracted, degraded, grasping, craving story.
Yeah, or programming. That's what it really means, programming.
Programming, beautifully said, right? Then access the field of not just awareness, that's separate self, access not just the field of awareness, but the field of awareness allurement, which is true self, and then individuate as your unique story. And your unique story is a story in the autobiography of God.
Yeah, that's why it tells itself.
Right? You are the God story that tells itself, and you are a unique chapter in the autobiography of God without which there's less God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's human dignity.
Yeah.
That's human dignity, my friend. I mean, that's why we're alive. And without knowing that, you can't heal, right? From the devastation of trauma, you can't heal from the depression, right? Because we're in quicksand. It's only when I know that my story is ultimately dignified and ultimately desired and ultimately needed by all that is, that I can actually realize that I'm welcome in the cosmos.
Totally. And I tell my students, what are the odds? I mean, consider moving at the speed of light. It'll take you over 110 light years to just get out of the galaxy. And there's about 2 trillion galaxies at the current estimate. Every time they build a bigger telescope, it gets bigger. But I say to my students, have you ever considered the odds that you're sitting here in this classroom with the fingerprints you have, the body you have, and the time and the place you are, and the opportunity to experience life, love, and creativity? What are the odds that is an accident? Like that is not even mathematically calculable. That is the magic, the mystery, and awe that is the first function of myth. That is the reason you should start every day by looking yourself in the eyes in the mirror and say, I love you.
Yeah, no, I love everything you're saying. I just don't like the word myth. I have to tell you.
Well, I know you don't like the word myth, but you know what?
But
I have to make a distinction between personal likes and actual meanings.
Yeah.
And I've studied myth extensively.
But you also have, let's have a little fight just for fun, right? You're also a very important educator, right?
Yeah.
And the word myth, the quality of myth being, A, that which is not true, but B, that which is particularly human is so.
You're forgetting, you're screwing the definition up.
No,
the definition of a myth is that which is not true, but always will be. So if you're going to be honest, God damn it.
I got to check, right? The question is, as an educator, is that our best word? So that's a good question. I hear you. In terms of what you're saying in its content, right? What we're saying is completely aligned and congruent in a profound way. I'm asking a pedagogical question, tenderly, which is, wow, is myth the best choice? It's almost like, and I get why you would want to, in other words, when I say the God you don't believe in doesn't exist. So you could say to me, well, Gafni, right? If the word God confuses people, stop using it. And I don't think we should stop using it. I think we should.
No, I've had many people tell me exactly that, to stop using the word God.
So what you're saying is that you're saying, well, Gafni, the same way that you insist on using the word God because it evokes something important and therefore it's worth our explaining, I'm using myth in the same way. I get that. So I understand. I totally understand what you're doing, and it makes perfect sense. I wonder if perhaps there's a new word? Is there a word that's neither story nor myth? We have to think about this together, right?
Well, I don't think we really need to think about it. I think what I'm trying to point out.
All right, I'll think about it myself, man. Damn.
No. I'm happy. I'm thinking about it all the goddamn time.
For fuck's sake, motherfucker.
Yeah. Look. I'm not contradicting anything you're saying.
You're not. No, we're congruent. We're deeply congruent.
I'm not contradicting anything. You're talking about cosmoerotic humanism. You're talking about eros. You're talking about the foundation of life and consciousness itself. One of my definitions of love is that it is consciousness becoming aware of itself.
That is no. We're completely congruent in a very deep way because we're in reality together. And you're of course absolutely right that even the notion of consciousness as the fundamental structure of reality is not true without relationality. If you actually look at Lee Smolin's work on, let's say, quantum loop gravity, consciousness is always relational. And even someone like, what's the popular, ostensible atheist who wrote The End of Faith, Sam Harris, right?
Sam Harris,
Sam's wife, Anaka, who's a neuroscientist.
I've read her book on consciousness.
So she wrote one 2 years ago, right, in which she basically kind of went with her classical position that consciousness was an expression of complexity. And about a year ago, she reversed her position and actually, did a series of talks where she said, I can't quite believe I'm saying it, but after actually examining all the information, I have to say that the only reasonable hypothesis for science is to assume that consciousness is fundamental. And then she goes on to correctly cite the evidence, right? This is not her work, but she correctly cites the evidence that you cannot talk about consciousness without relationality.
You
right?
can't. And you can't talk about love without relationality either.
In other words, if we could say it in one sentence, the universe feels and the universe feels love.
Totally.
Right. That's in the
You
end.
are the universe.
I'm calling that the basic plot line of reality, the basic story of reality, which is the inherent structure of reality, is a love story. And you're saying it's the great myth of reality. But by the great myth, you mean the actual deepest truth.
I mean the story that tells itself, which is
Right.
God's own relationship to itself, which is what you and I and everything is. But the reason I'm making the distinction is because when you look at the function of myth, throughout the entire span of human history, people created myths to help them understand what life was and to try to figure out what is lightning and all these crazy things. And Without a myth, a tribe falls apart.
Wait, but go slow here, right? But so I want to say, I'm going to be Paul now, you be Mark, right? In other words,
Look out.
look out, right? You could interpret the two sentences you just said, not how you meant them. Because the way materialist scholars, right, explain myth, they say, well, all through history, people used myth to help them explain it, to help cohere. That's what Harari says. Harari could use that definition of myth. That's not what Paul Chek is saying. Paul is saying that when people are confronted with reality, reality presses them into their interiors where they disclose the actual inner coherence of cosmos, and then they express that in mythic form. That's what you're saying, right? That's absolutely true. But again, if you went the other two sentences, if we froze frame them in the tape, Harari could say them. It's exactly not what you mean, which is why Gafni is taking issue with Chek and saying he's not in love with the word myth, even though I understand that it's a story that tells itself, but it's too easy. The point's so fucking important. I just don't, but I get it. We can agree to disagree on this. And
well, no, we don't need to disagree. We just have different perspectives. That's why we're here.
Damn.
Look, here's another way to look at it. There's a lot of fucking stories in the world that are bullshit.
Yes.
But when you look at what a myth is, it's telling you mostly about the process of birth, life, and death.
Yes.
That's the fundamental nature of myth. And that's the fundamental nature of love, because love births, love lives, and love dies or transforms. So I'm not worried about what Harari says. I'm not talking to him. I'm talking to Marc Gafni, and you can take anything out of context and completely.
No, I understand. And we need to create.
I love you, buddy.
I love you mad, right? We need to create a shared grammar of value.
Yes.
Becomes the structure and ground, right, of a shared story of value, which means we need to relanguage reality. And stay with me for a second. The birth of humanity is the emergence of attention, the emergence of story, and the emergence of language. The death of humanity in this moment of techno-feudalist metacrisis could potentially be the death of the reality of story, the hijack, the collapse of attention, right? And the collapse of language, or of the linguistic capacity, right, to make any form of meaning. So how we language actually matters. So I'm happy to, I actually enjoy this creative tension, right? I don't find it problematic, especially because I'm right and you're wrong. So it's easier for me. I'm teasing you.
Yeah, it's okay. I can see the perfection in your imperfection.
Oh my! I seem to be losing connection here. Can't quite hear you. No. It's great. It's a great conversation. It's a great.
What my wife would call that? Selective hearing.
Exactly. I can't quite hear you. Losing on the internet seems to be going out here. Vermont internet's not very good. But it's a great conversation, and we.
I got to tell you a funny story,
please,
about this. One time I was in the kitchen. I was trying to call my kids to get them to do something, and I was calling and calling, and there was no answer. And I said to Penny, I said, I can't believe these kids, they can't hear me. And they're right there in the living room. They're like 20 feet away. And she said, oh, yes, they can hear you. She said, watch this. And she said, dessert's ready. And they both dropped their everything and came running to the kitchen. She said,
that's hilarious.
It's just, you're not saying what they want to hear.
That is actually a hilarious story. That's actually hilarious.
Now, I got to loop back.
You
just said something important. You talked about awareness, and then you had like three other words.
Allurement.
Yeah.
That's very important.
The one word that I don't hear you using a lot when you're coupling these important words together, that I think is more important than awareness, is intention.
Right. So the nature of intention emerges from attention, right? My attention is drawn, and then it arouses in me an intention. So intention and attention are inextricable.
I think you can go both ways with that, Mark.
You can go both ways. We can go both ways with it, right? Right? But they're both rooted in allurement. In other words,
they are.
Allurement's always prior to both intention and attention. So when I talk about allurement, right? In other words, we're always concerned with both awareness and intention. Awareness
Yes.
doesn't have intention. Allurement does.
Yeah, I want to share a little bit about why the word intention is important to me, because I spent a lot of time investigating this inside with my soul and my spirit and my highest self and all the parts of me. And I wanted to ask, what does the word mean? Because for me, it's a person's intention that ultimately determines whether they're acting out of love or not.
Yes.
And oftentimes we don't understand like a child often does not understand the intention of a parent that's punishing it for doing something dangerous. And what I came to through my own inner investigation, and this is what my soul told me, my soul said the word intention means to put pure potential or God as the infinite or the unconditional into tension, without which there is no means for spirit to flow. Beautiful. It is one's intention that brings pure potential into actuality.
Yeah.
And I know that oftentimes it's my intention and my ask for help from spirit that directs my awareness to where I should be looking. Prior to that, I was like in a search function.
Yeah, that's absolutely. There is as you pointed out earlier, there is a virtuous circle in which attention breeds intention, but then intention opens up new fields of attention. That's very, very beautiful. And I think it's also worth saying, and I think this is all implicit in what you're saying. So I will be, with your permission, just commentary, right, to your text here, which is, we live in a world in which, as we pointed out earlier, we think that the concrete, measurable structure is the entire story. When actually intention, right, is so fundamental and so core. And actually the word Torah itself,
Torah, yeah,
a very famous word. So Torah also very beautifully has four meanings. One is illumination, light, the illumination of light. Two is to be a tourist, latur, right? Is Book of Numbers, chapter 14, verse 1, right? The spies go latur, to search the land. So it's searching. Three is Torah's hora'ah, or Torat Chaim, which is instruction. But then four, and all four of these together, is intention. So Yoreh is the intention of the archer. Zen in the art of archery pulls the bow back, but who then does this act, which is not an act of physicality, but it's the placing of precise intention and direction, is Torah. So Torah is, in one understanding, Paul Chek, right? You're understanding the placing of intention.
And the release of the arrow is symbolic of the flow of spirit.
And the release of the arrow is the natural expression of the flow of spirit that comes from intention. And, can I just do let's do a kind of dramatic and slightly, sacred off-color expression. I was, we're working now on completing, myself and my beautiful partner, Christina Kincaid, we're completing this 20-volume set, called The Phenomenology of Eros. It's got a 5-volume set, and there's another 12 volumes, complete volumes. And it's basically, we tried to write this kind of great work on sexuality and Eros to try and redefine it, around the world. And it's a long conversation what we did there. But in any case,
20 volumes long. You're worse than I am. I thought 15 volumes for Spiritism was bad.
There's a 5-volume short set, and then there's a 12-volume long set. Right?
You better be good, because you're killing a lot of trees, baby.
Killing a lot of trees. Now, so there's and in this we outline 7 tastes of sexing, right? And the second taste of sexing, which we call personality sexing, there's a number of qualities, and one of them is what we might call a kind of power sexing. And power sexing is always the play of domination and submission, right? Or assertion and surrender, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, all of that play is dependent on intention.
Yeah.
In other words, if you don't have a complete open heart, with beautiful intention, you should have nothing to do with that play. If that
the sex won't be any good anyhow.
First, it won't be any good. But
it'll be mechanical at best.
It'll be mechanical at best. And the joy of that particular taste, of that particular level of sexing, is precisely the love intention.
Yeah.
The love intention that actually arouses the surrender. So it's a very good example where intention transforms, right, the entire experience of love. It's a love desire experience. And really all of sexing, as we both know, is animated almost entirely by intention.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
really beautiful, right? It's a big deal. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
maybe when the phenomenology comes out, we'll have to. We've never done a talk on sexuality, have we?
No, but I have a lot to say.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, wow. So that we have a date. We have a date on that. I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be happy to do that with you.
Yeah, I can't wait.
That's as deep as love and God, because it is just an expression of love and God.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's huge.
And it's a very confused topic, as you know.
We'd have to spend some real time though, but this is a beautiful example of your notion of intention, that intention actually transforms the actual embodied experience in every way. And that reality actually is animated by intention. And
I think intention also inspires awareness in many ways. I agree with everything you've said. I just feel, I'll give you an example of why I know the power of intention.
Yeah.
I've spent over 4 decades helping people heal.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look back to my younger years, I'm like, how in the hell did I help anybody get better? I didn't know a fucking thing. I thought I knew what I was doing, but compared to me now, it's like a miracle. And I said to my soul one day, I said, how in the world did we help anybody get better? I hardly knew what I was doing, but people came to me with these really fucked up bodies and relationships and cases. And I was able to help them heal. And I said to my soul, how did we do that? And my soul said, Paul, your intention was always to love people. And that's more powerful than any knowledge you'll ever acquire. And don't lose it.
It's beautiful.
And that's how I know the power of intention, because it's more powerful than knowledge.
No, it's that is gorgeous, my friend. And if I can apply it with one example, I have a dear friend, student, colleague, named Harry. I won't say his last name because I don't have permission. He ran the largest therapeutic practice in the Netherlands for many, many years. And we've been studying together for, 7, 8 years. And one of the things we spent a lot of time in the last 3 or 4 years in our private study, is the need for therapists to reclaim the capacity to fall in love with their clients.
Yeah.
Falling in love does not mean that a therapist should be sexual with their clients.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
It means that if you don't allow yourself the intention of love of your client, you cannot transform them. And I want to say something. Do you remember that figure who was this kind of pop figure in the mid-70s who wrote that book that kind of penetrated culture? What was it called? The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So Scott got a couple of things really wrong, but a couple of things really right. And he got the intention of love in therapy, right? And he got that right. He was quite extreme. He said something in the mid-70s that you would be shot for saying today, correctly shot. I think he was wrong. I want to be clear about that. But he said, if I could be, erotically loving a client and that would heal them, he said, I would always do it. Not that he did it, but that he would.
I understand.
Right. We now understand that therapist should not do that. So let's no one take that quote of mine out of context.
Well, unless you go to the archetypal expression of eros, then it's erotic.
Or unless you're engaged in a kind of precisely, a kind of tantric work by intention, which is not therapeutic. Those things need to be separated. We need to have the therapeutic, the way that it's structured today, not be sexual.
Otherwise, the therapy gets confused.
That's right.
It loses its fidelity.
That's right. The nature of the therapeutic encounter is not a sexual encounter. It's an erotic encounter in the sense of eros.
Yes.
Right? Meaning I intend to love you. Right.
Yeah.
And Harry said to me, and again, he's, seen maybe thousands and thousands and thousands of, clients, that as he began to allow himself, right, to fall in love, not sexually, right, not to engage, but to actually open his heart
to namaste the individual,
right? To the unimaginable beauty, right, of his clients, and they felt his love. Was that feeling of being loved, which in the end they said to him was the most transformative. And in order for him to allow himself to do that, he needed the intention. He needed to allow himself to intend love.
Yeah. Amen. It's a whole great spirit. And this is why I tell my Chek professionals in training, you have to be careful not to let yourself get caught into the trap of working for money. Because if you start working for money, you bring more people into your life than you can love. And all love relationships come with responsibility.
Yep.
And if you enter into a relationship with a person that you're doing therapy on, you have to have, as a therapist, you've got to be able to have room to carry what's ailing them in you, to digest it.
Yes.
And work with it in yourself from a place of healthy detachment, but paradoxically engagement. And if you don't have the carrying capacity for another client and you bring one on, then the only option you have as a self-defense mechanism is to become mechanical with them. Now it's just push this lever, pull this, medicate this, and then the therapy loses its power. And that's one of the paradoxes that we all face, is whenever love gets traded for the need or the perception of the need for money, we run into trouble.
Yes.
And
it's a very, this is a very, we're I don't know how we got here. But we're here. So just to say two short things. One, I think that therapy today and, for example, sexuality need to be totally split. There's a different conversation about whether there's a role for what we might call a sacred intimate, right? And that's a different one, which we're not having. That's one, so I want to take that off the table. But two is the issue of money, which is, if you remember Andrea Dworkin. Remember, Andrea Dworkin was a figure in kind of early radical feminism, right? Who was very close to, Catherine McKinnon, who kind of led the kind of anti-masculine, anti-sexuality, radical wing of feminism that actually birthed women's studies departments around the country. It's a very important development. So Andrea Dworkin says wrongly, she says all heterosexual sex is rape.
Oh, right? My God. And that's a confused soul.
And there was a very famous statement that's actually all through women's studies departments. And, the sweeter way to say it was, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, right? Right. In other words, right. The point was that's
a broken child right there.
Right. But it actually dominated and still demarcates, right, much of classical feminist theory. And the assumption was, if there's an exchange of need, right, and there's an exchange of actual currencies, including currencies of finances, then it can't be that there's authentic relationship. And that's just not true.
Not at all.
Not at all. I think that's very important to understand. What you're saying is, in other words, actually, when we actually say to someone, I love you, and this is a bigger topic, when I actually say I love you, we have this notion that love and need are split. And I would say it a little differently. When I say I love you, it can't be filled with a codependent neediness.
No.
Right? That would be that which is often the case, where therefore it's not really love. It's actually a form of comfort/security. But love and need, the authentic experience of need, when I truly say I love you, I need you. Right? But not neediness. Love is not I love you, I'm needy. But actually, the actual experience of love is not just that I see you, but I'm willing to open myself up to be vulnerable. And to be vulnerable means I'm willing to need you. Right?
Yeah.
That's a deep structure. It's a big,
it is.
We need each other, right? Last sentence, Paul, and I'm thinking about it just as we're talking. So this particular experience that you and I have, and you've podcasted with many people, and I've had a couple of conversations in my life, and we've been blessed with good experiences. But this particular conversation we have only here, which means in order for Marc to show up as Marc in a particular way, in this particular quality, I can't do it without Paul.
Well, we bring something unique out of each other. That's true of every relationship.
That's true. And the deeper the relationship goes,
The
more
deeper the medicine.
the more the uniqueness emerges. So
Yeah.
when I actually love someone, I'm both loving them. I'm loving, wow, Paul, right? I could never pull off yellow glasses. That's not going to happen. Right. 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 I'm loving Paul. So my love is a perception. I see Paul, but I'm also self-loving because Paul evokes a dimension of Mark that can't be evoked by anyone else that ever was, is, or will be, which means in some particular way, I need you, which is very beautiful, but that's not a vulnerable thing to say. That's actually openness. Now, when the infinite, as you talked about earlier, when the infinite manifests as finitude, and the infinite manifests as unique selves, so what God is saying in the solemn lineage is, God is saying to every irreducible, unique self, I love you and I need you.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I love you
Yeah.
so much, God says. I'm willing to need you because divinity experiences a shocking self-recognition when seeing Paul, or as you said earlier, whoever's listening, put your name in the sentence, right? In other words, like, right? But not only does divinity experience a radical self-recognition when I see myself as Paul, Paul creates or generates more God to come. There's more God because there's Paulness.
Yeah, that's
shocking.
what we do for each other. I think that's what's missing in Harari's concept of self, unfortunately, and concept of other.
Well, somehow, and I guess we get to poor Yuval at the end, right? And he deserves the fierce critique, and maybe we'll be able to put in the show notes the critique we did of him because it's really important. But Yuval reduces the experience of feeling to materialist biochemical patterns. He plays with the idea of organism as algorithm, goes back and forth on it, and somehow he manages to do this very strange double speak Orwellian move where he says, well, I meditate every day.
Which confuses me. It hasn't been helping much.
I'm all about consciousness, but there's no meaning and there's no value. So he split consciousness from value, which is not just a category error, but it means it's a distorted prism in terms of the meditation. The meditation then becomes a kind of mechanical calming. And Yuval, and here's the thing, and Yuval, if you're listening, brother, you know better, man. So come, let's play. We've got to deepen this conversation. And if Yuval could just slightly reframe, he could actually be a really important ally in this moment of existential risk. But yay, Paul, what a crazy pleasure to be with you.
Well, right? I think what I want to say is that
please.
When we use that name, Yuval Noah Harari, it's a placeholder for scientific materialism.
It's a placeholder for postmodern scientific materialism. Yes.
Yeah. It's
but he's not a philosopher. We're not attacking. If he was just an individual philosopher making some mistakes, it would be uninteresting to talk about. He's rather what scholarship would call uncontaminated material, meaning he doesn't pull the punch, and he actually says, he's actually an echo, a parrot. He's not a philosopher. Right, he's a populist historian who's a good writer, and he actually becomes a parrot, right, for the kind of conventions or the dogmas out of unworked out postmodern dogmatic materialism. I think that's correct.
Yeah, well, it's the beauty of him, quite amazingly, is look at what he has brought out of Marc Gafni. My God, he has triggered an avalanche of deep wisdom, a reason to really bring people's awareness and intention back to what really matters. And so sometimes the devil works in mysterious ways, and to that I say, hallelujah.
Hallelujah, right? The holy and the broken, hallelujah.
Yeah, and so I say, as wound up as the guy can get me, he certainly has given people like you and I a reason to reframe and recontextualize what needs to be looked at from a much more comprehensive vantage point.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And last sentence, and you'll take us wherever the last place is to go. It's because, and I would say this is my biggest praise of Yuval, he's paradoxically, at least in some dimension, honest. Meaning, many, many writers, right, actually hold the same positions, but they pull the punch.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, and he's actually not pulling the punch, right? And there's something, you know, I mean, I could list 10 other writers, you know, who are kind of writing the same ilk as he does, but they pull the punch. They're actually, you know, you read someone like Jonathan Haidt, right, who writes about attention in the age of anxiety, etc. Jonathan basically has the same position as Yuval, but he hides it. He pulls the punch. It's more right. He kind of Shoshana Zuboff, right, who writes Surveillance Capitalism, pulls the punch. Nicholas Carr, who writes the original book, you know, on the shallows. Yuval Noah Harari, who writes Stolen Focus. It's the entire literature that critiques the techplex, right, basically pulls the punch on its act. The critics themselves don't believe value is real, which is why they can't ground their own critique. And Yuval, in a certain sense, has this kind of ballsy Israeli, like, I'm going to tell you what I really mean. There's no meaning at all. And that's helpful because he actually evokes, right? He evokes or discloses what's actually happening. And I appreciate Yuval for that. And of course, right, that is not only wrong, right? It actually is the ideology of world suicide, the ideology of depression, we said, is futility. There's no meaning. You know, depression is replaceability, right? There's no particular reason for me to be here.
Yeah. Well, thank God. Thank God that diversity rules.
Yes.
And creates stability, and that the same technology that people like that use to confuse people can be used to bring some harmony back into the whoop and the wharf of life.
Yeah.
My next one here, you may have touched on it, so let me know if you think you've addressed it. I'd kind of like you to restate this.
Please.
And I was shocked when I found this, Mark, in a footnote, tucked in footnote number 4 on page 1 of your introduction is information I feel should be central to your book because it lays down the fundamental elements of story. So I feel that anyone that doesn't understand these core elements of story is more susceptible to being storied the way people get mythed. So could you state those 4 fundamental?
You know, that's interesting, right? Because I got the question. I listed a little earlier the kind of 9 fundamental elements of story, right? And, you know, one could, so what you're asking me to do is to, can I reformulate them as 4? And I'll be glad to, right? And what we did earlier is we did kind of a deep dive into the 9 elements, but let's reformulate them in 4 simple ways. You know, 1, a story has a plot line. 2, the plot line of the story is a desire, right? 3, the desire is always for value, which means that the plot lines of reality are the first principles and first values of reality, right? So, and as we wrote a book called First Principles and First Values that you and I believe talked about on a podcast, the first principles and first values of reality are the plot line. And finally, 4, that a story is actually driven by 3 things: by past, present, and future. That's the one I didn't talk about in number 9. I did 9. The 10th one that I didn't do a little earlier is this: that actually a story is driven by the depth of the invitation of the present, the antecedent causation in our relationship to the past, and the call of the memory of the future.
Right.
So these 3 dimensions, right? So that if I had to do story in 4 elements, I would do it that way. And I super appreciate you asking to, there's a very beautiful text in the 4th century, which says, you know, initially they formulated it as 10, then they formulated it as 7, then as 3, and then as 1. So we formulated it as 9 elements of story. And you said, okay, let's get it down to 4. And these are the 4 I would do. And again, these 4 elements of story live all the way up and all the way down the evolutionary chain. And that's why we're at home in a story. Yeah. And that's why we don't want to move beyond our stories. We want to actually live. If you would ask me, what is the command categorical imperative of reality? It would be live your story. But not
Yes.
the story. Live your
story.
Live, but you got to live it. Full aliveness. The plot lines of your story, but it's your story. I mean, there's a practice, Paul, that I ask all of my students to do, and all of my friends to do, and I did myself. I actually sat in an apartment in the village. It wasn't even a village, with the South Street Seaport with Chek, and I did this for about 6 weeks. But I call the practice writing your sacred autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because everyone has a sacred autobiography. So there's the sacred text of the great traditions of science, right? Of new great works, right? Of this new story of value we're writing in cosmologic humanism, right? Of Paul's spirit gem. There's sacred texts in reality, but there's another sacred text, which is a unique sacred text, which is my sacred autobiography.
Yeah.
My sacred autobiography is the unique plot lines, right, of the value of cosmos as it's playing uniquely in my life. And when I begin to realize actually every detour was a destination,
Mm-hmm.
and every place I've been, I needed to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there were actually no accidents, and every scratch in the china becomes part of the design.
Yeah.
So to writing, and until I actually write a sacred autobiography, I actually can't get a sense of the plot line of my own life.
That's exactly, Mark, to the T, why I help people as part of their healing process and individuation process to identify what the key elements of myth are and to do the work
Beautiful.
of writing their own personal myth and illustrating it. And the transformation that people go through is powerful.
It's beautiful. That's
and
beautiful.
and that's what's coming up in my volume 1.
Let me join you in myth for a second, right? Let me join you in myth, which has been kind of this light theme. The movement of claiming my sacred autobiography is the movement from pathologize to mythologize.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And when I actually begin to mythologize and not pathologize, I actually begin to realize that my brokenness actually breaks me open.
Yes.
Right. And brokenness can actually create breakdown or break through. And that's what Cohen was trying to say in this song that's become a little bit of our anthem in this podcast. It's the holy and the broken, hallelujah. But there's a blaze of light in every word. We go back to that recurrent theme.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you heard. And that's a big
Well, for me as a therapist, what I've learned over and over again is that whether you call it a myth or your personal story, your relationship to that story is the difference between fate and destiny.
Yes.
And what I want my patients and students to do is know that they have the greatest influence on their destiny. And if they don't participate, then they're just going to recapitulate the habits of mom, dad, and culture. And that obviously isn't working well. And if we're going to make changes in the world, we have to self-inspire. We have to be a creator. We have to step into our authentic self and put heart into it. But you have to go into your heart to find out which direction the weather vane of the heart is pointing. And I think that's what it means to be on the hero's journey and to really participate fully in life and to know that you're here for a reason. There is meaning in your existence, but you can't live that meaning if you're fated. You can do it through destiny. That's when you give your love away.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Paul. I mean, it's why I beautiful and accurate and precise, right? That is to say, and it's why the term unique self is so important. Meaning there are no extras on the set.
No, zero.
We are all originals, and I originate in order to manifest my originality, which is, right, a unique spark, right, of the infinite intimate. And if I don't actually realize that, there's actually nothing calling me to my life. And that's just so fundamental. And it's only when I actually begin to respond to the call of my unique sacred autobiography, if I can go back to your 2 words you played with, it's only then that I can transform fate into destiny.
Yes. Yeah. You know, and I try to help everybody realize, look, you are playing a starring role in your story.
Yes.
You get to decide what the script is every minute of every day, and everybody else is cast and crew, right? I am playing a starring role and you're cast and crew in my story. And when you're talking, you're star and I am cast and crew. And if a person does not what makes a movie a good movie, as you stated, is it's so real you lose yourself in it.
Yes.
And there's only one reason that happens. That's because every single actor in the movie is so storied that you can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
You actually think Clint Eastwood is Dirty Harry.
Right.
And if you met him in another role, it can be confusing to you because he's that good at it. And when we really take responsibility for our story and we choose to contribute to the creation of our destiny.
Beautiful.
That's how you die a hero.
Yeah. No. So let's work with this. This is beautiful, Paul. So a long time ago, you know, I'm by the way, just in terms of my age, I'm 93. So, so a long time ago, I wrote a book called Soul Prints. Right.
I think I might have it in my library.
We talked about it once. So I wrote it was the first English language book that I published. And the 4th section of Soul Prints is called Live Your Story. And it's about it's about a lot of things, but it's about this exact notion that you're talking about, that we are each stars in our own story and we're each part of the set of everyone else's story.
Yeah.
And those interplay and intertwine. And it begins with, of course, the Dickens quote, you know, to be the hero of your own life. As I've gotten older, you know, as I've kind of moved towards, you know, maybe I'm 103. I can't even tell anymore. Right.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Right. But as I've gotten older, I've become less fond of Dickens' formulation. And I would say it just slightly differently, which is to become the hero of my own life. Right. The way that Campbell told the story is both powerful and limiting, because Campbell's kind of the weakness of Campbell is that he often interpreted the great myths, the words you're using, in kind of psychoanalytic terms, like Norman O'Brien did it about Eros. And
well, he was friends with Carl Jung.
right. And I think actually, you know, and maybe this brings us back to the book that we're talking about today. The 2nd section of the book is about the move from roommate to soulmate to homemate. So when I'm a roommate, I'm in a relationship, I'm fulfilling my roles. A soulmate, we're madly in love looking at each other's eyes, but actually soulmate doesn't work. Soulmates never work, right? Soulmates are what I call the tragic level of relationship, because at a certain point, you don't want to be just looking in someone else's eyes. And there's this great truth that no one's allowed to say, which is personal fulfillment by itself is never ultimately personally fulfilling until we get to wholemate. And we're now looking at a shared horizon together.
Yes.
And from the shared horizon, we turn back towards each other. So actually, you know, the way Campbell is repopulated through the New Age world becomes a little bit like Christopher Lash's culture of narcissism. And the hero of my own life becomes too narrow, too subjective, too therapeutic, in the shadow version of therapy, not the glorious version of therapy that you represent. And so perhaps I need to be 2 things. One is I need to be the hero of our lives, right? In other words, not just the hero of my life, but more than that, I need to be the hero of life. I need to actually realize that I'm all in for all life, right? And I'm a hero of life itself. So I'm actually in relationship to the whole, and we're each unique selves in relationship to the larger whole. So we move from being the hero of my life to the hero of our life to the hero of life. And that's the evolution of love.
Yeah, I personally have never got that impression from Joseph Campbell, because the function of the hero is to identify the challenge, the dragon that needs to be slayed, but ultimately it is for the people. And the hero always has to come down the mountain and share the wisdom, or they go off into the woods and suffer the pain of the weight of knowledge.
Right. So,
I would say always in everything I've studied everything Campbell's written, probably, and always the hero is really a gift to everybody else.
Yeah, so amen.
That's just a different take on it.
Yeah. Amen. And one day we'll have a conversation just about Campbell, right?
Love it.
Which is a great conversation. But yes, in other words, Campbell gets the idea profoundly. It really, of mythologize, don't pathologize. That's like insanely important to him. In the wound is the gift. And what I'm saying is only just one more thing, which is when Campbell meets when Campbell's myth meets psychoanalysis, it's in a world that's not yet in metacrisis, right? In other words, he's writing at a time, we're way before 1960 when Rachel Carson writes Silent Spring, or maybe Campbell might be still, I don't remember when he died, but he died actually a little later. He died later than 1960.
Yeah, he was, I think the 80 in 88 or 89 was the Bill Moyers series.
He was maybe a little, he was on the set of Star Wars when it was first made in the mid 70s. And I thought he passed, we have to look, I thought he passed relatively soon afterwards, but in any case, right? In other words, Campbell's work was not formed in relationship to the metacrisis. So in some sense, the ability to see ourselves as heroes for the sake of the whole, right? Even that was a more local thing, right? It was King Arthur's court. It was fighting Mordred. We're in this new moment where we really are in relationship to the whole, right? The way I would say it, Paul, is there's an unbearable intimacy today. Right?
There is, but don't forget, Joseph Campbell lived through World War II, for Christ's sakes. I'm sure everybody thought the world was going to fall apart.
But even World War II, I mean, in other words, the threat of World War II, even with its nuclear capacities, right, is dwarfed, right, by the threat today, right? In other words,
by the threat of social media.
The threat on multiple levels, and in some sense, this unbearable intimacy. I mean, what does it mean that in Wuhan, China, there's some gain of function research, right, which goes bad? We certainly know that it wasn't from a wet market today, right? And then you have this virus that crosses all national boundaries, and you have people dying around the world because of all sorts of organized, I mean, it's insane. So in other words, there's this unbearable intimacy. You and I both know, and I'm sure we've both talked about a lot, the notion of local doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Which is why local religion and why local philosophy is insufficient. When we have world challenges, we need world philosophy, right? We need a world religion as a context for our diversity, and we need a shared story of value. And really, Paul, what I was desperately, and what we're desperately trying to do, but desperate in a good way, in telling this new story of value, this cosmologic humanism, is what we're trying to do is actually, right, articulate a story of value, which we can all look at ourselves. And that's what then allows us to coordinate, because now we're in a shared story, and that we're intimate with each other, we're resonant with each other. When we have global challenges that require global solutions, we don't have global resonance and global coherence and global intimacy, we basically have world suicide, right? And
but it has to begin in the individual.
Yes.
Lao Tzu said, if you want to change the world, change yourself.
In 1,000%, my friend, and in the individual's understanding that my transformation is the transformation of the whole.
It is,
right.
And so the local is the I of the we of the all.
Yeah, beautiful. That's beautifully said. Gorgeous. That's exactly. That's right. Right. That realization is precisely the realization, right, that my transformation is the transformation of the whole. And it's precisely what gives dignity to the I.
Yes.
The I in the isolation has no dignity.
Yeah.
When the I is the I of the we of the all, in your terms, Paul, which I love that formulation, that I begin to experience my true nature, which is the source of my dignity.
Yeah.
And AI doesn't have that.
Not at all. Not at all. And you'll see I addressed that in my article that I wrote
Yes,
and
that
shared with
published
you.
it, which is great, which I'm going to cite in the upcoming AI book we're doing. It's a great article.
We can sort of start wrapping up, but I can't resist this.
Please.
We've now traded a word about 40 times that is very elusive. And I think I've shared my definitions with you before, but I think it's important for us to define what you mean when you use the word reality, because I have at least 12 scholarly books in my library that show even the greatest minds in the world can't agree on what reality is.
Okay,
so what does it mean in relationship to the evolution of love?
So that's such a great inquiry. What is real? And of course, real is reality. Reality is the real. And in the most direct understanding, there is no difference between God and the real. Same.
Amen.
And there's no difference between love and the real. Same.
Yep.
So the animating realness of cosmos is the currency of eros, that is the incessant love story, the myth that's always the story telling itself. Let's bring those together.
Yeah.
Which is the aliveness of reality. If you remove love from reality, reality literally, not figuratively, not
falls apart, it disappears.
Literally disappears.
Yeah.
Literally disappears. So love is the real, and the real is love. And the real is so in love with the productions of time, is that the real itself is willing to evolve, to actually become more. The real is so madly in love with reality that the real says, I'm going to become more by allowing myself to enter into the story of the real. So I could have just stepped back and been infinity.
Mm-hmm.
But infinity said, I don't want to be infinity. I want to be God. We think God's infinity. No. God's the infinite intimate, we said.
Yeah.
So meaning God is not just the infinity of power, this kind of exponential real of power. God's the infinity of intimacy.
Yes.
And the second the quality of the intimate disappears from reality, reality disappears itself.
Yes.
Wow.
That's quite close to, because again, I had to go sit with my soul. Whenever I can't find an agreement amongst experts that I have respect for, I have to go inside. And that's the responsibility of spiritual growth and
Yes.
a real educator, is to do your very best to, that's what Steiner calls spiritual research. And so I read all these books on reality, and I'm like, okay, there's pieces of here I agree, there's some here I think is crazy. So my soul said, Paul, reality is two things. It's what's happening right now. One, that's what's happening right now. You can't escape that, no matter who you are. Two, it's everything that supports your ability to love and to live.
Beautiful.
Everything that supports your ability to love and to live. And that's reality.
Yeah, gorgeous.
And so, those two definitions of reality are totally congruent with what you've just shared. So we have nothing to debate on, damn it.
Yeah. I mean, that is, I mean, when we say, as we close, when we say, let's get real.
Yeah.
Really what we're saying is let's love, whatever that means. And love is sometimes tender and it's sometimes fierce, but it's all right. Reality is all reality. Solomon, maybe my last word is from Solomon, the Solomon lineage, which is my source lineage, which is one of the 7 or 8 lineages that kind of forms this new story of value, cosmologic humanism, that we tell in this book. I really want to invite everyone, by the way, Paul, to either listen to the book on audio or get it in written form. But
and it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, and I guess where are audiobooks? I guess they're on Audible, wherever.
Audible, yeah.
Well, I'll ask Chris to send that over. But in the end, it's like the only response to a world of outrageous pain is outrageous love.
Yeah,
right.
It's true.
We do live in a world of outrageous pain. And the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. And we also live in a world of outrageous beauty.
Yes.
And the only response to outrageous beauty is outrageous love. So I outrageously love you, sir.
I outrageously love you too. You know, like I was saying to you when we were on break a minute ago, you know, I gave the example. I said, you've cut so many holes in the roof of my mind so I could see the stars. And you know, I'm not an easy guy to do that to. You know, I've got a pretty strong sense of myself and a pretty God-given truth compass in me. And I study a hell of a lot like you do, and I practice a lot. And, you know, I'll never forget my first book of yours. I'm like going down the road. I'm writing notes so fucking fast. I'm about to catch a page on fire. You know, I told the story in our first podcast. The thought that ran through my head 1,000 times is, I've got to get this guy on my podcast because this guy's fucking incredible. And, you know, Mark, I don't know how you do it. Your capacity for memory and for expansiveness of study. I mean, you're citing how quarks fit together, and you're able to cite philosophy and history and go toe to toe with the greatest minds on the planet. And I'm like, I say hallelujah to you, man. I don't know how you do it. You've got more goddamn neurons packed in that skull of yours than, you know, the beginning of the universe is something akin to what's in your brain as far as density, pal.
You are, Paul, you're both projecting and you're completely beautiful. And I appreciate you and love you. And it is pure joy to be with you. Literally.
You too. Yeah. Literally. Let's do it lots more times.
Lots more times.
You know, I could talk to you forever. I'd die of sleep deprivation if you were around.
Pure joy, my friend. Pure joy. I truly love you outrageously. What a crazy privilege and joy for me. Truly.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to everybody listening. I hope you guys have really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed Mark and I's brotherly debates. I dig it, man. You know, I love this guy. He could punch me in the face and I'd kiss him. But I hope you guys like really are with us and see how deeply important this is, what we're talking about. And I hope that you feel inspired to share this very, very important podcast with as many people as you can. And I hope you're just as inspired to listen to or read Mark's book, The Evolution of Love from Quarks to Culture, because I think it's a fundamentally important book. It's like as important as good food and good soil and breathing. If you really want to participate in the transformation that the world needs now, we need wise guides, and Mark's clearly that. And thank you to my sponsors for all your love and support and excellent products. And each of the sponsors supports organic and biodynamic and regenerative farmers. So whenever you buy from the sponsors, you're putting money in the hands of the great farmers that are taking care of our home, and you're supporting moral, ethical companies that care about you, and you're supporting the podcast, and you're supporting yourself, most importantly. So that's the circle of love right there. And so, Mark, I just say thank you. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Great Spirit. We are safe. We are home. We are whole. It is done. It is done. It is done. Aho, Great Spirit. I love you, buddy. Talk to you real soon.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Marc Gafni. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube. You can find Marc online at marcgafni.com. That's MarcGafni.com. Or connect with him on Instagram, Twitter, and Substack at Marc Gafni, and on Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok at Dr. Marc Gafni. You can also watch more on his YouTube channel at Marc Gafni. His latest book, The Evolution of Love from Quarks to Culture, The Rise of Evolutionary Relationships and the Response to the Meta Crisis, is available on Amazon in print, Audible, and Kindle editions. You can also find all his other books there, including Your Unique Self, The Radical Path to Personal Enlightenment, and A Return to Eros, the radical experience of being fully alive. Marc offers a free weekly broadcast, plus listeners can download chapters 1 to 4 of the award-winning Your Unique Self book by going to onemountainmanypaths.org/your-unique-self. Marc's mini course, Your Unique Self, can be taken free at uniqueself-institute.com/the-unique-self-mini-course. All these URLs can also be found in the show notes. For more interaction with Paul and to share ideas and ask questions about the topics discussed in this podcast, we invite you to join Paul's Spirit Gym program and community. There are 3 different levels of membership where you can participate in live Q&A sessions with the podcast guests, access the members forum within the Spirit Gym community, attend weekly virtual meetups with Paul, and study his comprehensive Master Key online program. Explore the options and subscribe today by going to myspiritgym.com.